The video opens inside a luxury ballroom glowing with golden lights. Expensive chandeliers hang from the ceiling like shining stars, and soft music fills the air. The hall is full of rich investors, powerful businessmen, and famous media people. Everyone is dressed in fine suits and designer dresses, smiling with confidence. They are celebrating an $800 million business deal, a deal that will make many of them even richer than they already are. Laughter echoes around the room as glasses touch and people congratulate each other. Reporters take pictures, cameras flash non-stop, and the atmosphere feels like a victory festival. Every person in the ballroom acts as if nothing can ever go wrong, as if life will only move upward from this moment. But in one quiet corner of this grand hall stands a man who doesn't match the shining environment around him. His clothes are simple, almost too simple for such a place. His shirt is faded, his shoes are old, and his jacket looks like it has seen many rough days. He stands with calm eyes, but those eyes carry a tiredness that only a long life of struggle can cause. His shoulders are a little bent, like someone who has carried heavy burdens for many years. No one pays attention to him. People pass by him again and again, but no one stops to ask who he is or why he is here. To them, he is invisible. He is forgotten. He is no one important. The man doesn't speak. He simply watches the celebration from a distance. His face shows no anger, but there is something deep behind his silence, something hidden. He observes the businessmen laughing loudly, raising their drinks, shaking hands, and hugging each other. He watches them cheer for the $800 million deal, a deal they believe they fully control, a deal they think belongs to them. They don't know that one small truth, one secret about the man standing alone, could change the entire night. A group of rich businessmen walks past him, talking loudly. One of them glances at the man and gives a small, annoyed look, as if the man's presence is ruining the beauty of the event. Another whispers to his friend, "Who allowed this kind of person inside?" His friend laughs and says, "Maybe he's a cleaner." They both laugh loudly and continue walking, not even thinking about the pain their words might cause. But the man in the corner doesn't react. His face stays calm. His eyes stay peaceful. He has heard worse things in his life. A waiter hurries by carrying a tray of wine glasses. The ballroom is crowded, and the waiter accidentally bumps into the lonely man. A dark red wine spills all over the man's shirt. The liquid spreads across his chest like a deep wound. The waiter gasps, apologizes quickly, and runs away in fear of losing his job. The businessmen nearby laugh again. One of them says loudly, "Look at him now. He doesn't belong here at all." Another says, "Someone should remove him before he ruins the photos." Their voices are loud enough for him to hear, but he remains silent. He looks down at his stained shirt for a moment, then lifts his head again slowly. Inside his eyes, something sharp appears, something the people around him fail to notice. It is not anger. It is not fear. It is something much stronger. Hidden power. Hidden knowledge. A truth waiting to come out. The celebration continues. The cameras flash. The music plays. The businessmen brag about their success and their expensive lifestyles. But the man in the corner stands still, almost like a shadow in the middle of bright light. No one knows that he is not here by mistake. He is not a cleaner. He is not a random guest. He is here for a reason more powerful than anyone can imagine. Minutes pass. The room grows louder. The rich investors prepare for the signing ceremony. But the man's silence feels heavier than the noise around him. It feels like the calm before a storm. A storm that only he knows is coming. He finally lifts his eyes toward the stage where the signing will happen. His face shows a quiet strength, the kind that grows from years of pain, loss, hard work, and patience. His lips move slightly, forming soft, almost whispered words that no one else hears. One day, the truth speaks. And with that single whisper, the story begins. Not the story the businessmen think they are celebrating, but the story of the man they ignored, the man they disrespected, the man they laughed at, the man who secretly owns everything they believe is theirs. The music continued inside the luxury ballroom, but the quiet man's mind was far away from the shining lights and loud laughter. As he stood in the corner with wine stains on his shirt, memories from his past began to rise inside him, one after another, like old wounds reopening. He had not always lived like this, silent, patient, and hidden. There was a time when he had dreams just as big as the ones these businessmen celebrated tonight. But life had treated him differently. Life had tested him more than anyone in that room could imagine. He grew up in a small neighborhood where people worked hard just to afford food. His father was a factory worker, and every day he would come home covered in dust and sweat. His mother worked in a small shop to earn extra money. They did not have much, but they had honesty, warmth, and love. The quiet man, named Ion, learned early how difficult life could be. He walked to school without shoes sometimes. He studied under streetlights during nights when the power went out. He used old books that other students had thrown away. But even in those hard days, Ion had one special gift: he never stopped learning. He loved reading about business, technology, and people who changed the world with their ideas. While other kids played games, he sat in corners reading books he found in trash bins or borrowed from teachers. He always believed he would build something meaningful one day. Something that would help people like him, people who were ignored, underestimated, and pushed aside. But dreams rarely come true without struggle. Years later, when Ion finally became a young man, he created a small tech idea. It was simple, but powerful, a platform that could make certain industrial processes easier and faster. With very little money, he built his first working model, staying awake night after night. When he finally showed it to the world, a group of businessmen became interested. They praised him, smiled at him, treated him with respect. They told him they wanted to partner with him. They said they wanted to help him grow. Ion trusted them. He shared every detail of his idea, his designs, his concepts, his plans. He believed they were honest men. But soon, he realized their true intentions. They took his idea, registered it under their own names, and pushed him out. They claimed his work was too weak, too small, too unprofessional. They told him he wasn't fit to be part of a big company. They said he lacked the right look. And like that, they stole everything he had built. Ion was left with nothing. He returned home broke, heartbroken, and without any support. People whispered behind his back. Some mocked him. Some pitied him. But he did not give up. Pain had taught him more than success ever could. He decided to start again. He took small jobs, cleaning offices, serving food, repairing computers, anything that brought in money. But he never stopped learning. Late at night, he worked on new ideas using old laptops and donated parts. He saved every extra dollar. Slowly, he began investing in small companies that no one believed in. He understood technology deeply, and he understood people even better. His investments grew. His savings turned into wealth. Quietly, without any noise, without telling anyone, he rebuilt his life piece by piece. Years passed. His name remained unknown to the world, but his influence spread far. He bought shares in multiple companies. Some small, some big. And without anyone realizing it, he became the largest hidden shareholder of the company, celebrating the $800 million deal tonight, the same company built on the idea he created years ago. Now he stood in the same room with the same type of men who once destroyed him. They laughed around him, thinking he was a nobody. They acted as if he did not exist. They treated him like he was worth nothing. But this time, he was not the weak, hopeful young man they could push aside. This time, he held the power. Real power. Silent power. He looked around the ballroom again. Everywhere he looked, he saw expensive watches, shiny shoes, and proud smiles. People were living in a world they believed belonged to them. But the truth was different. They had no idea that the man they mocked, the man they spilled wine on, the man standing alone in the corner, was the true owner of the empire they were celebrating. Ion's eyes softened for a moment as he remembered his father's words from many years ago. Son, never show your strength too early. Let time reveal who you really are. Tonight, time was finally ready. He watched the businessmen he once trusted laughing loudly with champagne in their hands. He saw the media preparing their cameras for the big signing moment. The entire room was excited for the final announcement. But hidden under all their confidence was a truth they were not ready for. Ion checked his watch. Only a few minutes remained until everything would change. He took a slow breath, straightened his simple jacket, and looked toward the stage. The world had forgotten him. But he had not forgotten the world. And tonight, the world would finally learn who he really was. The celebration inside the ballroom grew louder as the minutes passed. People were raising their glasses, laughing, shouting, and telling stories about how rich they would become after the $800 million deal. For them, this night was a symbol of success, a symbol of power. But for Ion, who stood quietly in the corner, this night was something else, a moment of truth. A moment he had been waiting for since the day his dream was stolen. He watched the crowd carefully. Every smile, every handshake, Every proud look only reminded him of how these same types of people once pushed him to the ground. But tonight, they had no idea that the man they mocked was standing right in front of them, stronger, wiser, and more powerful than all of them combined. One of the businessmen, a tall man named Daniel, noticed Ion again. Daniel was known for his arrogance and his sharp insults. He nudged his friend and pointed at Ion. "Look," he whispered loudly, "the poor man with the stained shirt is still here. Does he think he belongs with us?" His friend laughed. "Maybe he's hoping for free food," he said. Their laughter echoed across the room, and a few others joined in. Ion remained still. His face stayed calm. But inside him, memories flashed like lightning, memories of the day these same men had taken away everything he worked for. Memories of the betrayal, the humiliation, and the pain. Ion's heart beat slowly, not with anger, but with a strong determination. He was not here to fight with them. He was here to show them the truth. Near the stage, the reporters were gathering. The signing ceremony was about to begin, and everyone could feel the excitement in the air. The CEO of the company stood proudly at the center of attention, smiling at the cameras. He believed he was the hero of the night. He believed the world would soon applaud him for making the biggest deal of his career. But the truth was simple. He did not know that his entire company was now in the hands of the man he had once betrayed. A group of guests moved closer to the stage, blocking Ion's view for a moment. He stepped aside quietly, avoiding attention. But as he moved, he accidentally brushed against another businessman, who turned around sharply. "Watch where you're going," the man snapped. Ion nodded politely and stepped back. But the businessman was not finished. "People like you have no idea how things work here," he said loudly. "This is not your place." The words cut through the air, and several heads turned toward Ion. Some eyes were filled with disgust, some with curiosity, and some with pity. But no one knew the truth. No one knew that the man they were looking at was not an outsider, he was the foundation of the world they were standing on. Ion took a slow breath. He reminded himself of the countless nights he had worked in silence, the sacrifices he had made, the battles he had fought alone. He had learned long ago that strength did not come from shouting. Strength came from patience. Strength came from waiting for the right moment. And that moment was almost here. From across the room, Ion noticed a familiar face. It was Adrian, the man who had once shaken his hand and promised partnership, only to stab him in the back days later. Adrian was laughing with a group of investors, telling them stories about how hard he worked to build the company. Ion felt a wave of sadness wash over him. Not anger. Just sadness. How easily people forget the truth. How easily they lie to feel superior. As the music slowed and the lights dimmed slightly, a host walked onto the stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "please gather around. The moment we have all been waiting for is here. It is time for the signing of the $800 million agreement." The room erupted into applause. Ion watched everyone move toward the stage with excitement. Some pushed forward to get closer. Some fixed their clothes to look more important in the photographs. Some whispered excitedly about how this deal would change their lives. But none of them knew that their lives were about to change in a way they never expected. A journalist accidentally stepped close to Ion and looked at him with confusion. "Are you lost?" she asked kindly. Before Ion could answer, another woman nearby whispered, "Ignore him. He's not part of this event." The journalist nodded and walked away. Every mistake, every insult, every humiliating moment was being recorded in Ion's heart. But he let it pass. Because in just a few more minutes, the world would know the truth. The world would see who this poor man really was. Ion straightened his jacket. He wiped the remaining wine stain gently. He looked at the stage with calm eyes. His time had come. The host took a deep breath and spoke again. "Will the majority shareholder and final decision-maker please step forward?" A sudden silence fell across the ballroom. Everyone expected one of the rich investors to walk up. But no one moved. And then, Ion took his first step toward the stage. A quiet gasp spread through the ballroom as Ion took his first step toward the stage. It was slow, steady, and confident, but it felt like a thunderstorm had struck the room. People who had ignored him suddenly noticed him. People who had laughed at him now stared in confusion. Their eyes followed every step he took, as if their minds could not understand what they were seeing. The man with the faded shirt, the man with the wine stain, the man they believed had no right to be here, was walking toward the center of the event. The host on the stage looked puzzled. He checked the paper in his hand again, then looked at Ion, then back at the crowd. For a moment, the entire room was frozen, not a sound, not a whisper. Only the soft echo of Ion's footsteps filled the air. The lights above him made his figure appear stronger, sharper, almost unreal. The same man who had been treated as invisible now looked like the only real person in the room. One of the businessmen, Daniel, stepped forward quickly. He whispered loudly, "Who does he think he is?" Another voice answered from behind, "Security should stop him." But no one moved. It was as if the air itself had changed. Something felt different. Something felt wrong, or maybe right. The people could not tell. But they felt it. Ion reached the steps of the stage. The host stepped slightly to the side, unsure. Ion stopped for a moment, looked around the ballroom, and saw all the faces staring at him, surprised, confused, irritated, and anxious. For the first time tonight, a small smile appeared on his face. Not a smile of pride or revenge. A calm smile. A smile of someone who already knew the truth while the world stayed blind. The CEO of the company, Adrian, stood near the table where the signing papers were placed. He watched Ion with disbelief. His eyebrows tightened, and he leaned a little forward, trying to understand who the man was. "Excuse me," Adrian said loudly so everyone could hear. "This area is reserved for the owners and investors only." His voice carried arrogance, but he was trying to sound polite in front of the cameras. Ion looked at him gently, then turned his eyes toward the host. The host cleared his throat nervously and said, "Sir, can I see your identification?" His voice shook slightly. He wasn't afraid of Ion. He was afraid of making a mistake. Ion nodded. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple, folded document. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't fancy. But it held the truth of the entire room. He handed it to the host. The host opened it and began reading. His eyes widened. His lips parted. His hands shook. He read the document again, and again, as if his mind refused to believe what it saw. The ballroom grew so silent that even a breath would sound loud. After a long moment that felt like an hour, the host slowly lifted his head and looked at the crowd. His voice trembled as he spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this document shows that Mr. Ion is the majority shareholder and the final decision-maker of this company." The words struck the room like lightning. A wave of shock passed through the audience. People gasped loudly. Some covered their mouths. Some stepped back. Some dropped their glasses. The sound of breaking glass echoed across the hall. The businessmen who had mocked him earlier turned pale, their pride collapsing in seconds. Their eyes darted around the room, searching for something to hold on to, but nothing remained. Ion slowly climbed the final step and stood on the stage. For the first time, he looked directly at Adrian. Adrian's face turned red, then white, then confused. He stuttered, This must be a mistake. It can't be. His nobody." The host, still trembling, replied, "The documents are official. They were submitted weeks ago. He owns 62% of the company." The crowd exploded with whispers. 62%. Is this true? How did we not know? Who is this man? Ion looked at the table where the signing papers lay. Papers worth $800 million. Papers that would make these businessmen richer and more powerful. Papers that they believed they controlled. He placed his hand gently on the top page. Then he lifted his head and spoke for the first time that night. His voice was calm, steady, and surprisingly soft, but every word cut through the air like truth itself. "I built the foundation of this company," he said. "When I had nothing. When no one believed in me. When some of you stole my ideas and pushed me away." Gasps filled the room again. Adrian's eyes widened in fear as he realized who Ion really was. Ion continued, "You laughed at me tonight. You insulted me. You poured wine on me. You treated me like I was worthless." He paused. Then he added with a quiet strength, "But today, the truth finally speaks." Every person in the ballroom felt the ground shift under their feet. Every mind raced. Every heart dropped. Ion picked up the signing pen. The fate of the $800 million deal was now in his hands. And no one could stop him. The entire ballroom was frozen. Every eye was fixed on Ion as he held the pen in his hand. The $800 million deal that everyone had been celebrating, that everyone believed they controlled, was now completely in his power. The businessmen who had mocked him, laughed at him, and spilled wine on him could hardly believe what was happening. Their confident smiles were gone. Fear, shame, and shock replaced the arrogance that had filled the room minutes ago. Ion looked around slowly. He did not hurry. He wanted every person present to understand the truth, not just the documents in his hands, but the life behind them. He saw the faces of people who had once betrayed him. Their expressions were pale, almost trembling. Some tried to hide their fear behind weak smiles. Some whispered to one another, hoping to find an excuse. But Ion could see through all of it. He remembered every insult, every moment of humiliation, every time they had thought he was weak, unimportant, invisible. For a moment, the room was silent except for his calm voice. "Do you remember me? The man you poured wine on? The man you laughed at? The man you called a nobody?" He paused and let the words sink in. The whispers, the laughter, the confidence, all had disappeared. Even the cameras stopped clicking for a moment. The media sensed the shift. The story they had thought was about wealth and business was now about truth, justice, and human dignity. Ion continued. "You thought I was nothing. You thought I had no power. But you were wrong. Power is not measured by arrogance or money alone. Power is measured by patience, by knowledge, and by integrity. I waited. I worked. I rebuilt everything you tried to take from me. And today, the truth is finally here." He placed the pen down carefully, not to sign the papers. The room gasped. Everyone thought he would finalize the deal, take his revenge, or humiliate them further. But Ion's power was not in destroying them. His power was in showing them the truth. The businessmen who had mocked him, Daniel, Adrian, and their friends, stepped forward nervously. We're sorry," Adrian stammered. "We didn't know. We didn't realize." Ion held up a hand. "No," he said softly but firmly. "This is not about apologies. Apologies are easy. Actions are what matter. You poured wine on me. You humiliated me. You thought I would disappear. But I didn't disappear. And now, you must live with the truth of your choices." He glanced at the cameras, then back at the crowd. Journalists wrote furiously, editors typed quickly, and every click of a camera captured history. But Ion's attention was not on them. It was on the lesson that everyone in the room would carry forever. Never judge someone by their clothes, their silence, or their current position. Ion looked at the signing papers again. He could finalize the deal and gain even more wealth immediately. But he had already won something more valuable, the truth, respect, and justice. Slowly, he tore the papers into pieces. The room fell silent. The sound of the tearing paper echoed like thunder in the luxury hall. The businessmen froze. Their dreams of an $800 million windfall were gone in seconds. Ion spoke again, calm and clear. "Power is not about who controls the money. It is about who controls the truth. You believed wealth could make you superior. You believed arrogance could hide your mistakes. Today, you learned otherwise." Some of the businessmen fell silent. Some could not even look at him. Others began to understand the lesson in his words. Ion did not leave the stage. He simply turned slowly and walked toward the corner where he had first stood. The quiet man, invisible to all, had shown the world the force of patience, hard work, and dignity. Outside the ballroom, the media reported the story immediately. Headlines would read about the mysterious man who owned the company secretly. Millions would watch, read, and share the story. But for Ion, it was never about fame. It was about justice, respect, and proving that no one should ever underestimate someone quietly working toward their goals. As he left the ballroom, Ion felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had endured pain, humiliation, and betrayal. But he had also earned wisdom, patience, and inner strength. He stepped outside into the cool night air and looked up at the stars. A soft smile appeared on his face. He did not need applause. He did not need revenge. He had done what mattered most. He had remained true to himself. The businessmen left behind would never forget this night. Every time they thought of power, success, or wealth, they would remember the quiet man who owned everything, and yet had shown mercy instead of cruelty. And in that silence, the real lesson of life became clear. Do not judge someone by their clothes, their status, or their quietness. You never know who they really are, or the strength they carry inside. Ion walked away slowly, leaving the ballroom behind. The celebration, the wealth, the laughter, all seemed small now. Because the greatest victory was not money. The greatest victory was the truth. And for the first time in his life, Ion smiled without hesitation, knowing he had finally won, not just a company, but the justice, respect, and peace he had always deserved.